morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me in this thing?
Yep.
So great to see all of you. This classroom format is very interesting. So we could go through some sort of professorial lecture, which I have no knowledge to share. But we are so glad that all of you are here. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to take the express lane currently on this intro here, so we can give some time to those that want to talk that are our amazing sponsors to just say a few things. So you are at Social Media Breakfast Madison. In case you missed that and are supposed to be at something else, our focus is to talk about social media and educate about social media, and also network for those of us that are interested in social media in the Madison area and what that means in many, many, many different places. We meet the third Wednesday of every month. We always have about 200 to 300 people. In this one, we had a waiting list of I think it was over 80 people. So pretty cool, right? I mean, Mo's very popular, so this makes sense, but we had a big waiting list. So if you know of a location, or if you know of anybody that wants to volunteer, please let us know. We are very open to any ideas that you might have. This is us. You can find us and follow us if you would like to. These are the board members. All right, so if you want to connect with us, you can connect with us. The little tidbit on the Facebook side here is there's a new feature that Facebook has out that is under liked, and you can say see first. This came out last week on Facebook. So you can see content from our page first if you'd like to. If you don't, that's okay. You don't have to. But you can if you'd like to. Thank you for those that sponsored the Social Media Breakfast Boys and Girls Club ride. So this is the team looking very handsome. Follow along at #TeamSMBMad during the ride, which is on July 18th, so coming up here. And we have Nate Moll, who's the thumbs of UW-Madison, next month, who is really an incredible guy if you've not met him. He is extremely funny as well, so it should be really entertaining. Hopefully a little, oh hey. Mic is up. So please join us. And then we have Spencer Smith, who's also, as I said about Don Stanley a couple months ago, look, rip out your seatbelt out of your car, bring it into the presentation, because you're going to need it for Spencer Smith. Because he is an incredible thought leader as well in the space. So any speaker ideas, always let us know. You can tweet at us. No one's off limits. And we'd like to give an opportunity for our sponsors, our premier sponsors, to say something. So,
my name is Chris Rudolph from the American Family Insurance DreamMake. Anyone heard of DreamMake before? All right, awesome. We love Social Media Breakfast and are so glad to be sponsors. And we've got a lot of great stuff for you. We are a free community space on the Capitol Square, and we run probably 35 free events every single month, including a lot of social media events. So.
Hey guys, I'm Jamie Fuller, the owner-operator of the Chick-fil-A at Westtown here in Madison. Just wanted to share a couple things about Chick-fil-A with you. First, we're a large brand. There's about 1,900 Chick-fil-A's across the country. But an interesting thing about us is each one is individually owned and operated. So even though we're a big brand, we've grown at a local level. So.
My name is Nick Schilling. I'm with Mass Mutual Wisconsin here in the 8th floor of this building, and I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Mass Mutual, just a couple of sentences. We were founded in 1851, and we're a mutual insurance company, and we were recently listed as 94 on the top 500 in Fortune magazine. And whether you're a startup, an individual, or an established business, we can help you establish your goals and figure out the roadmaps to get to those goals.
all right, now we know why we're here, so I'm going to introduce my friend Maurice Cheeks, who, as you know, is basically a big celeb at this point. So I'm just going to say a few words about Maurice. So he's a personal great friend of mine. He was first elected to the Madison City Council in 2013, and he is now the current director of the Wisconsin Innovation Network. He is going to talk today about how to use social media to change the world. So please give me a warm social media breakfast welcome to Maurice Cheeks.
So first, thank you to the organizers of SMB. This is a huge honor for me to be invited to this, and I consider myself to be a pretty active citizen. And for my money, I can't imagine that there's ever been a better time to be an active citizen. I'm stunned by the amount of change that we're able to see in the past 5-10 years. Amazing time to be an active citizen. Sort of everything that this organization is about, everything that we get together to talk about every month, the ways in which we communicate, share information, experience news, relate to one another, all of that was impossible 10 years ago. And so as an active citizen, one of the things that I think about is how amazing it is to be able to relate to so many people so easily and to so many bodies so easily. Even more exciting than what a great time it is to be an active citizen sort of in the history of the world, it's an amazing time. Like, listen, if you haven't thought about this yet, this is an amazing time to be in Madison, to be contributing to Madison and the Madison area. We will undoubtedly shape the legacy for the next generation of this city over the next 5-10 years. I'm going to talk a little bit more about legacy towards the end, but Madison is experiencing, we're going through sort of a crucible right now in terms of this changing very rapidly, and the demographics are growing younger and more diverse, and the ability that we social media, this is a whole thing. The ability that we have to utilize social media to impact our communities is really phenomenal. So for all of you who are expert practitioners in social media, you guys already sort of understand these three sentences, or these three rows in the sentence. One of the things that I find that people who are sort of underutilizing social or underappreciating about social is they skip the middle line. And they imagine that social media is just some newfangled way to convince people to make important decisions about their lives. And one of the things that I've recognized over the past several years is that the middle line there is the most important bit about social media. That social media it isn't even that revolutionary. It's a new title that we put on the way that we communicate. But telephones changed the way that we communicate. Email changed the way that we communicate. We called it Web 2.0 before we called it social media. What we're doing is utilizing the most modern technology to communicate, connect, and build trust with one another, and thereby influence major decisions. That's the way that people have always made major decisions, is by communicating, connecting, and building trust with one another. And I want to tell you a short story about how I first realized the power of communicating, connecting, and building trust with people. So I moved to Madison in 2007. Moved to Madison to take my dream job. I was working for Apple. They said, come move to Wisconsin. You can live wherever you want. You'll have a company car. It'll be your job to work with K-12 education schools throughout all of Wisconsin, minus a few of the very large schools. So I never had the privilege of working with Madison or Milwaukee, but barely 23 years old, and they said, "Here's a company car. Have fun." This was a huge honor, and one of the reasons I loved it was because I was working in the world of technology. I was working directly with schools and had the opportunity to impact communities and young people's lives. Also because I was working for arguably the coolest company in the world. Now, some of you with your Android watches are like, "Oh, what about Google?" I said arguably. In any case, when I left Apple in 2010, I sort of suddenly realized, about 10 days out, I said, I'm going to need a car. I don't actually own a vehicle. This is a huge problem. I lived on the far west side at the time. I think actually in Alder Barbara McKinney's district. Thank you for being here, Alder. And so about 10 days out, I thought, I'm going to need a car. So what do you do when you realize you need a car? We're going to do a little participation here. So I thought to myself, one of the things I could do would be get on Craigslist. Like if you need a car, is that one of the things that you guys would probably do? One of the first steps, you'd say, I'm gonna get on Craigslist and look for a car. Another thing you might do is you might go to the dealership. You might go to the dealership and say, nobody goes to dealerships. This is really neat. One of the things you might do if you need a car is you might go on eBay, or you might go directly to the dealer's website. You say, I think I'm interested in a Volkswagen. Go to vw.com. How many people would just go straight to the website of an auto manufacturer? So this is amazing. So I did all those things. Of course, that's what you do. But then on a lark, just on a whim, I posted on Twitter. This is 2010. So some of you guys might remember in 2010, there's like 200 people that you follow, and that's it. So you can look at Twitter like at the end of the day and still see all your stuff. I posted on a lark. Does anybody need anybody selling a car? I need a car. I got one response, just one, from somebody who I'd only met once, maybe a year prior. But he says, my girlfriend's looking to sell a car. Give me a call. We'll talk about it. Turns out his girlfriend had moved to Madison 6 months prior. She had this car that she didn't drive hardly at all. She was underemployed since moving here, and she just really wanted to get out of this vehicle. And so I didn't really know this guy, but we had been following each other for about a year on Twitter. And so I had some sense of he was a real person, and I know some of the things about him. And that was enough. That was more than I knew about anyone at the dealership, anyone on Craigslist, anyone on eBay. And so despite the fact that we live in a world, when this all went down, it exploded my brain. Despite the fact that we live in a world where global budget for advertising and marketing is something like $400 billion annually, and some decent percentage of that is dedicated to the sale of automobiles. Me knowing this guy on Twitter undercut all of that. And he says, if you want it, all we're looking to do is get what it's worth, what we still owe the bank on it, just not want to get out of this. It wasn't until I showed up to look at that car that I even thought, oh, it's a small red automobile. Like, I didn't even ask that question. And I thought, oh, this is really fun. So I end up buying the car. We go to the bank. I pay off the rest of what she owes on it. I solve an important problem in her life. I solve an important problem in my life. I literally only knew this person through Twitter. And the whole, whatever budget Volkswagen and GM and all these other companies have to try to influence me in these decisions was completely undermined by the fact that I had a relationship with a human on social media. And what I think is really powerful about that is in your organizations, when you're looking to influence people to make important decisions about their lives, whether it be to impact whether you're looking to influence students or potential customers or contractors or whoever it may be, if you can figure out how to do that middle line, to communicate, connect, and build trust, that's your path forward. Right? If your goal on social media, I got some questions in preparation for this, is how can I convince people that I'm awesome? Nobody said it that way, so that's why I said it. I'm rephrasing it. This is an interpretation. How can I convince people that I'm awesome? The answer to that is communicate, connect, and build trust authentically. And that otherwise, what you're trying to do is just influence people's important decisions about their lives. And that's never going to work because the percentage of that $400 billion annually that you're investing isn't worth measuring, right? I mean, if you're just trying to break through the noise, it's going to be impossible. One of the things that I thought was a really good example of that outside the business world, in politics, you guys might be aware that I'm in the world of politics, is in 2008. 2008 was a long time ago, so some of you guys might not remember this. But in 2008, there was this far-fangled idea that this country would be interested in seriously considering electing some junior senator that happened to also be a junior senator that didn't have a ton of political clout, was a junior senator with not that much political clout that was also a black guy, and his middle name was Hussein. Literally most people thought this is a really nice idea, and good for him, and I'm interested in supporting that to a point. And in the critiques of that campaign that were happening live at the time, one of the biggest downsides to that campaign in 2008, people said, his opponents have too much infrastructure. There's too much power, there's too much political clout, there's too much organizational clout, there's just too much for him to be able to, for this campaign to be able to break through. And what that campaign was successful in doing was not just reach people's eyeballs, but sustain their interest and build meaningful connections. One of the best examples of that was the way that they cultivated relationships with their volunteers. This campaign, in retrospect, has been described as something that would have been impossible if not for the volunteers, if not for growing the pie of people that were interested in being involved in this. And the 2008 Obama campaign recognized that pretty quickly, that the relationship with their volunteers is one of the most important things, the most unique differentiators they had as an organization. And they really leaned into that. And a great example of how they authentically built trust and demonstrated that trust was with what was arguably one of the most important announcements they were going to make during that whole campaign, which is, who's going to be your running mate? So some of you guys may have been on this text list, but when this campaign was happening, a ton of the energy around it was about the Obama brand and the movement and hope and change. And speculators at the time said, announcing a vice presidential candidate is risky. What if it looks political? What if it looks inauthentic? What if that might suck some of the momentum out of the campaign? And in doubling down in the trust and relationship with their volunteers, one of the things that they did, which was brilliant, is instead of the traditional approach to announcing who the vice presidential candidate was going to be through an AP wire or through a leaked story to the New York Times or through this grand presentation on the stage, they said, hey, listen, what if we just tell our people first? The people who trust us the most, the people who love us the most, what if we give them the biggest news in the world before anyone else? And it worked. They had a relatively small text message list at the time. It was a couple million people. And they sent out a note. There was a technical error, I believe. This went out at 3 a.m. Eastern time, so it was like not optimal. But at 3 a.m. Eastern time, they sent out a note to a few million of their closest fans, their most loyal customers, their biggest volunteers, and they say, here's the news of the year. We want to share it with you directly. And so people wake up, they see this text message, and they think, wow. But their second thought goes back to last month's SMB. This is shareable. I wonder who might not be on this list. I wonder if I should tell my friends about this. And so when you think about how this applies to your organizations, be it business or anything else, it's so important. A lot of people want to grow their top line social media numbers, they want to have more followers, they want to have more fans, and that's great because you want to have more customers, and ambition to grow is really, really important. But respecting your existing base is one of the most important things that you can do. That's where you're at today. Trusting those people and empowering them, it is going to lead to your growth. Just as it did here, where their SMS list grew to then 20, 30 million over the course of a really short amount of time. And some people might say about this, how does this change the world, right? In this case, it added a tremendous amount of momentum and fuel to this campaign. And I'm sure that it would as well for yours. So this is literally just a picture of my dog. It's a special request on Twitter. My friend Kayla, here you are, thank you so much. She has a Nova Scotia duck following your retriever, and she said, can you show a picture of your dog? So That's it. Hard transition. Let's keep going. I'm respecting my existing audience, right? That's what you asked for. Social media is shaping our community, both locally and globally, to increase accountability and highlight our humanity. This is one of the most important things that's happening on social right now. This is actually the big differentiator. When I said earlier that social is just a new way to communicate, if there's an asterisk there, this is why. Because of transparency and accountability. So I want to tell you a quick story about accountability where I was on the right side of accountability. So as an elected official, it's fun to tell that story. You can ask me later about a story where I was on the wrong side of accountability, if you want to get into that Q&A. So November 2014, you guys might remember there was a gubernatorial election. And at the same time, in my district, there was a tremendous amount of construction happening on Verona Road. And some of that comes into the neighborhood. So you guys might know where the Home Depot is on the west side. You might know the name Allied Drive as a neighborhood and have all sorts of ideas about what that means. Images conjure up for you. If you've never been to the neighborhood, you probably don't have a specific image, but know that that neighborhood has been improving drastically over the past 10 years, and I might say over the past 2 years. But anyway, Verona Road construction having a huge impact on that neighborhood leading up to an election. About 10 days before the election, I start getting emails and calls from constituents who are saying, construction's happening all over where the polling place is. Are you changing the polling place? No, if I was changing the polling place, you would have known about that weeks ago. I don't have time to do that. Let me get into it. So I call the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, I send an email, contact the clerk, and I contact the state legislature. I didn't get through, I left a message with an intern and didn't hear back. I said, my constituents are really concerned about the polling place, and you got 10 days left till the polls open. Construction seems to be not moving as fast as I would have expected. Can you do something about that? Yeah, all cheeks, we got it, no problem, we got it, don't worry about it. Okay. So I keep my eye on it over the course of the next 5 days. It doesn't look like progress is happening very quickly. It's Friday before election day. I go out over my lunch break, because being an alder is not a full-time gig. I go out during my lunch break and I look at the location, and it's still in poor shape. Construction hasn't happened very quickly, and so I go through that same contact list again. Hey, is this going to happen on time? What do we do if it doesn't? What can I do? And I get a lot of, yeah, older cheeks, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. And so I go out the next day. I go out Sunday night. This is, election's on Tuesday. I go Sunday night. It is not nearly as far as it needs to be. I'm very concerned about this. Nobody seems to be taking this seriously, but there's 1,000 people that voted this polling place in 2 days, and it's inaccessible due to construction. So it's nighttime, I can't take the pictures then. I come back the next morning and take this. What's the name of the Instagram app that lets you take video? Is it Hyperlapse? Thank you. Took this on Hyperlapse and edited it on my phone with iMovie. Just to highlight, this location is extremely inaccessible, and I didn't know what else to do. Nobody was taking my concerns seriously. And this neighborhood doesn't have sort of a loud voice, and so that's my job, right, is to be the voice of these people. And so I send out this video. I post this on my Facebook at, I think, 8 a.m. or something like that. And I've been doing the work of establishing a following through social media for some number of years now, so some people notice it. So I post this on Monday morning, and what do you know? People noticed it. So now this is on the Cap Times. This is part of the Monday morning news all of a sudden. I've never seen them do this before, but they linked directly to my Facebook page, linked directly to this video, and basically said, all their chiefs seems to think that there's a concern about voter suppression or something of the sort due to construction. That's a problem, right? And so, hey, guess what? I start to get calls back. I start to get calls back. So I get a call back from the Department of Transportation. I get a call back from the state legislature. I get a call back from the clerk saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you did that. You know, we'll actually be able to get this done, I think." I get a call back from several people, including, I get a call from somebody who says, "Hey, this is attorney such and such from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I saw your information in the news. We're really concerned. I'm here with a room full of lawyers. Tell me what you need us to do." What? What do you mean? I'll keep you posted. That's all I'll do. I don't know what you can do, but it seems like a room full of lawyers is a powerful thing. Anyway, what do you know? Over the next 24 hours, everyone's doing work out there. All of a sudden, this construction gets done. And I go out the next morning, so I tell the room full of lawyers, I'll call you at 5 a.m. tomorrow to let you know if it's done or not. I go out at 5 a.m. the next day to put out wayfinding signs and let people know voting's still happening, it's in this location, the sidewalks are clear, the car entrances are clear. Maybe that was going to happen either way. Maybe that was their plan the whole time, to procrastinate until the last minute and then do it. But it got done, right? And through the power of social media, right? I'm an elected official, and I couldn't make this happen just by picking up the phone. But through the power of public transparency and accountability, some stuff happened. There's several questions that I received in the past couple of days. Some of you guys may have seen I was tweeting about this. And if you didn't get a tweet from me, it's only because I put out a request on Fiverr to go through the list. And if you don't know what Fiverr is, it's like this little, it's a website that allows you to make a virtual request to someone to perform a service for you. I said, go to this list, find everybody's Twitter, and I'll contact them. So some people weren't on the list. I did get to a lot of people, and it only cost me $5, so that was really useful. Social media, it has the ability to do exactly what these two people are saying. How do we show widespread support for a topic, for an issue? Valerie from the Foundation for Madison's Public Schools out here. Thank you, Valerie. And then Tim was asking about accountability, proactive engagement, and dealing with negative feedback. So I want to start with the negative feedback thing, turning a negative into a positive. I got a few questions about that. Did anyone see this story happening on the internet? The dead raccoon in Toronto? So this was crazy. So this happened just a week ago. I love the fact that, when we're talking about social media, there's constantly new stuff that you can just roll into your presentation. So this happened a week ago. I'm going to tell this story real quickly. There's a dead raccoon on the street in Toronto. As happens. And somebody sends a tweet to the Toronto city government and says, there's a dead raccoon. You guys might want to come pick that up. And an hour or so later, somebody comes by and says, notices there's a dead raccoon. They post it on their Instagram. This happens over the course of the morning where people are posting this picture spontaneously. This is just happening. And then people start to find out about it amongst each other. And we start adding to a little pile, right? So we get a little sticker where somebody says, oh, how cute, whatever. And then somebody comes out later and puts a rose down. And somebody comes out later and puts a little picture. Where do you get a picture of a raccoon and a frame? You get that custom framed? So by the end of the day, it's 10 p.m. You've got candles, you've got love letters, you've got eulogies, you've got the frame, you've got more flowers. This is just spontaneously happening. Right? This didn't actually result in the city coming very quickly. It took all bloody day. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that somebody showed up and breaking news, City Toronto has arrived to remove the raccoon. But here's what happened. There was a negative situation in the community. So some people would see this and say, how does this change the world? Right? So there's a negative situation in the community, and the community spontaneously erupts to demonstrate their character. Right? That the community was able to rally around this incident and just have fun with it. They're a little disappointed that city government took all day to deal with it. But I tell you what, yesterday, my wife, who's been to Toronto, said to me, she's just sitting there, we're having dinner, she chuckles out loud and says, I love Toronto so much all of a sudden. Now that's a real thing. She's been there. She had relatively modest opinions of it. It's not terribly noteworthy. And then through a community demonstrating their character online, it changed the opinion of a human about their whole city. That's interesting. That's really kind of phenomenal. Can anybody think, so this is a small, a relatively trivial example of social media getting, what's the word? Sort of swift social change. Can anybody think of a recent example of something more substantive social media gets? Yeah. South Carolina. I thought that would take a couple. That's my next slide. Thank you for that. What's your name? Eric, thank you. So, South Carolina, June 17th, is that right, Barbara? June 17th, a young man comes into a black church, sits down in an intimate setting for Bible study. They invite this man in. They spend an hour together. Through hate and fear and racism, he decides that his mission that day is to shoot these people. Part of that mission was empowered by him, was empowered by the symbolism of the Confederate flag. And to be sure, an infinite amount of credit goes to the family and to the community for immediately demonstrating the power of their faith to offer forgiveness and to try to find how they're going to make progress in their own community. But I tell you what, if not for the power of social media, I believe this would have changed. This would have not resulted in the swift action that it did. Social media allowed people all across South Carolina, all across the country, all across the world to say, listen, this is 2015. This is unacceptable. Something has to change. This symbolism, as historic as it may be, as culturally relevant, as culturally important as it may be to some, it's unacceptable that we would not change something. It's unacceptable that we would not identify this, this symbol of power and remove it from flying over our state's capital. That's not how we want to represent one of the 50 state capitals. We only have 50 of them in the whole country, and one of them has. So social media, what goes crazy? Social media empowers this young woman, Bree. What's her last name? Newsom. Bree Newsom empowers her, right, to scale this flag, take it down on her own will, and become a living legend in the moment. Social media backs her up, says, yeah, that's the right thing to do, you're a hero, thank you for doing it. Social media empowers the state representative, Jenny Horn, empowers her to give a truly impassioned speech on the floor the week that this was being decided. She's a Republican. She tells the story of her family having deep, long-standing cultural ties, mixed emotions, having respect for the work that was done on behalf of the Confederacy, but she outcries, this is unacceptable that we wouldn't take this down. It's 2015, the world is speaking, we have to take action. The world is speaking, we have to take action. Social media then continues to back her up. She becomes a living legend. This is going viral. This is circular. People are being empowered to act courageously because of social media. And then their courage is being rewarded on social media. So then only a couple days later, the governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, signs the resolution and says, we're gonna take this flag down, and now you have this picture of her hugging the interim pastor for Emmanuel AME Church. And some people might say, how does this change the world? But I tell you, this happened in less than 1 month. 1 month. We have an incident, we have a resolution, we have people whose lives are catapulted into the global sphere of social media because social media allowed us to demonstrate our shared humanity. We were able to collectively say, something's got to change. And elected officials then were in a place where they were able to act courageously in a way that they didn't need to, right? This was the end of the legislative year for them. The easier political way to deal with this would be to say we're going to get back to it. And then you know what? When they get back to it in January or whatever, nothing would happen. Social media, the public outcry would have faded. But the public outcry was so strong that that was unacceptable. Some of you guys may have seen, I posted this just before we got started. I really just wanted to draw your attention to this concept. You know, in this article in US News, they say, we are seeing major advances for equality and fairness, and none of them are originating with public elected officials. This is why I say that this is one of the most important times, one of the most exciting times to be an active citizen. Because social media is empowering us to change our world. Social media will continue to empower us to shape our future, and that's going to look, you know, some type of way in Madison. So I want to keep moving so we can have time for questions, but I want to give you a few examples of sort of what we're doing in Madison right now on social media, and where I hope we go. Happy to take. First of all, interrupt me at any time. You've got a politician and a salesman with a microphone. I'm going to keep going if you don't stop me. But what does this look like in the future? So a couple public uses of social media that are happening particularly well. You know, I mentioned that WISDOT was spurred into action through accountability. But that's not to take away from, they're actually doing an exemplary job on Twitter and particularly on Facebook of keeping people informed about the Verona Road construction. If that intersection impacts you ever, be sure to be following them on Facebook. They'll keep you posted basically day to day on what's going on. The water utility does a really good job kind of making light of themselves. You know, it's water, right? I mean, how interesting could this get? But they'll share stories of, you know, we won another award for cleanest or actually best tasting water, and like, that's pretty good. That's good to know. What the Madison Police Department does really, really well is they recognize, and some of you guys may have questions sort of related to this, they recognize the unique position that they're in and the unique opportunity that social media affords them. So MPD, basically anytime they show up any place, it's terrible news, right? So it's like the worst day you've ever had anytime you're having an interaction with MPD. It's a very memorable negative experience, either because it's a traffic stop and that's a bummer, or because you had a very bad situation happen and they're responding on the scene, hopefully to protect you and keep you safe, but it's still a very bad situation. And what they use social media for, it's truly public relations. They use social to humanize their department. And so they'll post really fun pictures of police officers buying gifts for kids in the community for Christmas. Or they'll post pictures of the fire chief comes into the police chief's office one day. Fire chief is jealous because the MPD had Greenbush Bakery donuts that day. And they show off the humanity behind what is otherwise a very one-sided experience. And so for your organizations, I'm sure that if you're in, somebody was asking me earlier about the insurance industry, right? That's a very narrow niche. The type of content that you're sort of expected to present is a certain way. The protocols in your industry are a certain way. But if you can use that opportunity to humanize yourself, that'll be really powerful. So some possible future public uses of social media that I'm particularly excited about. Participatory budgeting. Has anybody ever heard of that term? few people here. That's awesome. You guys can be part of the next campaign. Participatory budgeting is a concept that that's being utilized in over 100 cities throughout the world, where a public entity, where the government is empowering the public through in-person meetings, through democracy, through social media, to make direct decisions about how spending is going to happen in their communities. I can imagine social being a huge component to that. It's something I advocated for last year with my colleagues and had some support, but we didn't get that introduced into the way that Madison does business yet. Development outreach is a major area where I could imagine we could do a much better job of collaborating. So anytime development is happening in your community, it's a cause for concern, right? There's change and people fear change. And the city does an okay job of keeping people posted on that, but it's not organized, and it's certainly not utilizing social. If we could get to a place where we're collaborating with a development project, and the city and the developer are collectively keeping the local community informed, I think we could increase enthusiasm for development and decrease pressure. We could also be using social to solicit feedback from our customers. Many of you guys do that. I'm sure that you would like to be collecting more feedback from your customers. The city's the same way. Anytime we're providing a service to anybody, whether it's anything, it's important to us to find out how do we get better going forward. One of the things that this isn't practical for an alder to maintain a public calendar. One of the things that I imagine really for any public elected office is a public official works for the public, and I think it would be perfectly reasonable for us to be maintaining a public calendar so that we could say, hey, I'm going to be on, you guys have probably seen these web services where I could just have a website where you can click into my calendar and say, I want to schedule you for a meeting at this time. It'd be perfectly reasonable for an elected official to keep a calendar like that and say, I'm going to be on the east side. You want me to show up at your barbecue, or at your nonprofit, or at your church, or at your whatever. Just book it. I work for you. There's no reason not to do that. Another thing, this is just aspirational. This is just, we'd have to change state and federal law to be able to really do this right. But we've got to get to a place in this community, in this country, where we're doing online voting. And this image is just a hat tip to some of my friends in Madison who put together sort of, what you'd say, sort of fiber, but not quite to the home, right? You put together the initial steps to be able to do voting mostly online, although that's, I think, now defunct. So I mentioned earlier that this is an amazing time to be an engaged citizen. It's also an amazing time to be in Madison. So for the first time in modern history, you guys might not know this, for the first time in modern history, the majority of the people living in the world live in cities. And the majority of those people live in medium-sized cities. So Madison, literally, I believe, we're in a position where we sort of owe it to the world to lead by example for what an innovative medium-sized city could look like. I think that planning for growth, embracing diversity, and embracing connecting with each other, utilizing social, utilizing our shared humanity to sort of chart our path forward is going to be the way that we're going to do that. I mentioned earlier that that we're going to be shaping our legacy in Madison. So I want to provide a little shape to that. I'm walking on this side mostly. How are you guys doing? So Madison is an awesome city, right? Everybody says that, both here and elsewhere. Everybody says Madison's an awesome city. A tremendous amount of the assumptions underlying what makes us great are based in our history. We're awesome primarily based on nostalgia right? And so there's all sorts of things that Madison's done to make a reputation for itself as a progressive city. But unlike some other cities, we have yet to sort of align our vision for where we're going into the future, right? So we know what we love about this place. We know what we love about our history. But I believe that you, not me, I believe that you, through the connections that you form, the trust that you build with one another, the accountability that you put on folks like me, are going to shape the future of this community by collectively defining what do we want to be in the future. And I don't think any individual or any organization needs to be on the sidelines for that. Your business, your university can be an integral part of defining what the future of this community is going to be. And so we'll have to answer for ourselves, what does a progressive community look like? If that's how we want to, if that's the term we want to continue to use going forward. But what does this community look like in 2015 and beyond? And social media, while it will continue to be an important way that people are influenced to make important decisions, social media is the way that we connect, build trust, and build relationships. And the fact that we can do that so quickly to such powerful ends is really inspiring to me to be doing the work that I'm doing.